Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us for this exciting program. Happy MLK Day. And we're so excited and pleased to present to you our first annual MLK Day panel discussion. Our theme for this year, 2026, is community empowerment and education. I'm so delighted to have our distinguished panelists joining us today. Welcome, distinguished guest, friends, colleagues, family. Thank you so much for carving out time to join us for this exciting program. So, when we talk about Dr. King, we often focus on the dream, the legacy that has been with us now for so many years. As we look at our theme today, which is community empowerment and education, we're focusing on the blueprint. And in my own professional and personal journey, I've seen that education is the most consistent tool that we have for not only our own community empowerment, but breaking cycles and a whole host of other things that we'll be touching on today during our discussions. With education, we also do need to have empowerment because that allows us to come full circle. So the process is really, really important. In my background as a scientist, an educator, a minister, and a leader, that has taught me that you can't simply hand someone a solution. You have to have that capacity. They need that capacity to be able to build the communities of their own. So today we are joined by two leaders who are doing exactly that. We'll explore how they've moved within their own professional capacity and in their own profession and the things that they see and what's coming on the horizon. So we're going to explore that. How do we go from being spectators of history to being architects of our own communities' futures? So I'm delighted to present to you Barrister Toki Oduneye. She is founder and principal attorney of Oduneye Law Firm. And also we have with us Dr. Pope, Dr. Arthur Pope. He is a physician scientist, and he has had a long career. It spans several institutions and has a wealth of experience that he'll also be bringing with us. So, if we could just pause for a moment and perhaps do a virtual clap for them, that will be great. Thank you all so much. Okay. So, our first speaker is Dr. Pope. Dr. Arthur Pope was born and raised in Chicago, is a first generation college student. He obtained his BS in chemistry at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He has again been in a variety of institutional settings. He moved from there to obtain his PhD work in biomedical sciences at The Ohio State University first, and then finished up at the University of Florida. I know he and I crossed paths during his time at The Ohio State University. After completing postdoctoral fellowships at the National Institutes of Health and The Ohio State University, he decided to pursue medicine and obtained his medical degree at Loyola University in Chicago. He completed residency training in emergency medicine at the University of Chicago, where he served as chief resident. He recently joined Rush Medical College in Chicago as an assistant professor in the Department of Emergency Medicine after spending 4 years at the University of Pennsylvania as a physician and educator. Dr. Pope has an interest in recruiting the next generation of medical students who are traditionally underrepresented in medicine. So this would help close the gap in health inequities. And we're really delighted to have you, Dr. Pope. So we will go ahead and at this time, Dr. Pope will have his remarks to share with us. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Thanks you so much, Dr. Any, for having me on this panel today. I'm excited. And so one of the things that I kind of want to talk about in theme of Martin Luther King and empowerment is in healthcare. So recently, as Dr. Toby mentioned, I recently moved back from Philadelphia, where I had been faculty and an educator at the Pullman School of Medicine, which is associated with the University of Pennsylvania. And one of my jobs there, I got involved and was lucky to get involved in running two programs that we like to call pathway or pipeline programs. And these programs are essentially designed to get people like myself, so like first generation college students, underrepresented, low socioeconomic status, to keep pursuing the dream of going into medicine. And the nice thing about these two programs is that each year, one of the programs that was exclusively for University of Pennsylvania students, we would accept two of those students who wouldn't have to take the MCAT, and they would essentially get a linkage admission to the Perelman School of Medicine. They'd also get a scholarship as well that would cover at least partially of the tuition because it's expensive to go to medical school. And then the second program, we work with five HBCUs and five liberal arts colleges around the University of Pennsylvania to again bring these students on campus for 2 years of summer research, as long as they did everything they needed to do, including maintaining their GPA, completing research, getting great evaluations from their research mentors, being professional amongst us. They also had an opportunity for linkage into the Perlman School of Medicine. And the majority of the time, all of those students would be accepted because we've already vetted them, we've already done the work, they've shown their potential. And so I think this is the way that, creating programs like this is how we start to close the gap in health inequities, training individuals who come from these communities who will then most likely, because research has shown that we're more likely to go work back in these communities of color and help to educate our patients. So those are some of the ways that some of my work has empowered our communities to be health advocates for themselves and again, closing that educational gap.
Thank you so, so much for that delightful remark, Dr. Pope. Thank you for sharing your thoughts there. And I've also posted in the chat. If you're just joining us, do feel free to post questions for the panelists as we go along and as we move further. So our next panelist is Barrister Toki Oduneye. I'll just read over her bio. Dr. or Barrister Toki Oduneye is a distinguished attorney, founder and principal attorney of Oduneye Law Firm, where she practices exclusively in U.S. immigration and nationality law. She has over 13 years of experience. She's a highly sought after voice on immigration policy, employment-based immigration, family-based immigration matters. Mrs. Oduneye earned her Juris Doctor from Southern Methodist University, Dedman School of Law, and holds a bachelor's degree in political science and international relations from the Ohio State University. So another Ohio State University affiliation there. Her legal career has included representing individuals, families, universities, hospitals, and business entities before the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Department of Labor, and Department of State, and other agencies with immigration oversight. Her practice focuses on complex immigration matters, including H-1B and O-1 petitions, physician waivers, employment-based permanent residence, national interest waivers, and family-based immigration, as well as naturalization and deportation defense. She is widely recognized for her strategic advocacy and practical insight for navigating the US immigration system. She's driven by her own background as a member of a family of immigrants. Mrs. Oduneye is deeply committed to advocating for immigrants, whom she views as a lifeblood of America. She pursued a career in immigration law to give a voice to the voiceless and is dedicated to ensuring that her clients receive knowledgeable, compassionate, and effective representation within an often complex and challenging immigration system. So, Barrister Toki, we are so delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eni, for putting this together. I know this is the first year, and our prayer is that you keep growing and growing as we educate and empower the community together. Thank you so much, everyone that has joined us. Thank you for my co-panelist, Dr. Pope. You can see that OH, Ohio, brings out great, 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 great community leaders. Thank you all so much. But just to throw a little fun into, because, sometimes when we think about MLK, many people have several feelings, all kinds of feelings, but I find it very, should I say, important or funny that I believe he gave his speech August 28, 1963. And 2026 will be about 63 years, I believe, that he has actually given that speech. And we're still talking today about, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. So I find today his speech, I Have a Dream, very empowering. And also, to me, I believe I live it every day in my practice because many people that I represent, that's why they're here, the American dream. And this is the dream that Martin Luther King Jr., he gave a huge speech about, he fought about his whole career. We all know him for this. So my story of empowerment is every day, but I'll pick out one. And it's one of my most recent ones. I have other ones, but this story is dear to me because my client is she was or she is a mom who just barely had her baby, and the judge made her, or kind of ordered, forced her to come back to court literally 3 weeks after she had her baby. And I, as the attorney, I was actually trying to say, look here, we can get a doctor's note, I can go, that's why you've hired me. She's like, no, I want to do everything right. If the judge says I have to be there, even though I had all these health issues, blah blah blah, with her 3 weeks old baby, and she didn't speak any English, so her husband was the one doing the interpretation. I am going to be there. And just seeing her drive, just seeing the fact that she's like, even her husband, we want to do everything right. We're not criminals. We work hard. Made me really, really like, not only professionally advocate for her, but also, as Reverend, we can't miss the fact that Reverend Martin Luther Jr. is a Reverend, right? So there's also that, religious part of things. Also had to go in with not just the legal part, that empowerment part, but also taking as, if this was my sister, how would I treat this case? So my empowerment story is seeing her with her, looking at her 3-week-old son with his squishy face, breastfeeding in court, the wind, because the wind was blowing the little baby in his little car seat, and this mother wanting the best for her child and the family unity. So that, I would say, is my story of empowerment, going out every day, fighting for foreign nationals who just want to have that dream, right? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he said he said, I have a dream that one day black and white, right? He said Protestants and Catholics, right? He's trying to say, so here now, people that are saying foreign nationals, right? They call them illegals, and Americans. It shouldn't be one against the other. It should be all of us having that one voice of justice, having that just one, that we're all equal one day in the eyes of, we're all equal in the eyes of God, and hopefully in the eyes of America. So I would say my work would, in conclusion, is using the law to open doors for every immigrant that I tried and do my best that cross my path, and not close them. And that is how I see Dr. King's dream being continuing to take shape right now in our community and in our society today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Barrister Toki. Amazing, just amazing. Um, um, details and the extent of all of the work that you're doing, that you're both doing. And so, with that, we're going to go ahead and kick off our reflective questions. And again, if you joined us, you can post any questions that you have for either of the panelists, Barrister Toki or Dr. Pope, in the chat. So, our first reflective question has to do with resource equity. So, as you both know, Dr. King spoke extensively about the two Americas. In the context of education today, you both have achieved essentially what is a very high level of education in America. How do we think about in our current educational system moving beyond simply providing access to ensuring that true community ownership of educational resources? And that may look a little bit different from the legal perspective versus the medical perspective. I know there's a lot of things that we can touch on there with medical equity, etc. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of how you see that currently and where we may need to think about as we're leaning into this future that we're going into with all of what is going on currently.
I guess I can go. So I think um, one of the biggest barriers that I'm seeing right now in terms of like being able to empower a community with education is at least knowing some simple information about their health, right? I see that there is this sort of like top-down sort of approach in medicine that can occur. And so in the ER, for example, I see patients normally at their worst day. Like that's why they're there, right? This is probably one of the worst days of their lives. And so they're overwhelmed by everything that's going on, the noise, the people, everybody's like kind of moving around them. And a lot of times when I'm talking to them, they may not understand like why certain things are being recommended. Why am I taking certain drugs, right? Because they've just been in and out the healthcare system and people haven't had time. And a lot of this is outside pressure that is placed on a physician to see a patient in a certain amount of time, right? And so it's not a failure of the patient, it's just a failure of the way we're delivering care. And so we're squeezed by systemic pressures, and there's a lot of unconscious bias that colleagues may have, and so it's a lot of you talking rather than listening to the patient. And so what I think I try to do in my own practice is I try to do a lot of teach back method when I'm in the emergency department, right? So as an attending, I have a little bit more time than the residents now, which is great that I can go in because they've done a lot of the work in terms of interviewing the patient, and I'm just like kind of tying things together. But when I go in the room, I say, um, if a patient has a question, I say, well, what is it your understanding of what's happening today? Right? How can I help you explain? Did I answer all your questions and your concerns? That's a lot of times. I think people just want to be heard. So the first thing I always say is like, did I answer your question? Did I, bring up the things that you're actually concerned about today? And then when I'm discharging them, I try to explain it in the plainest English that I can, right? Because a lot of times we're speaking all this medical jargon. I'm sure it's the same thing in the law, right? Sometimes things can get very complicated, but I try to like bridge that gap by saying, this is what it is in English, right? And then also like writing that in their discharge instructions in a very clear way. And then, for example, I have a lot of patients that come in that are coming in for like repeated things over and over again, and they feel like no one's helping them. So, example, if somebody's coming in with like chronic abdominal pain, one of the jobs I had before I went to medical school, I worked in a GI practice, and so I'll tell patients, I was like, you need to document everything. You need to document, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried that medicine, because that's exactly what they're going to tell you to do when you go to this office, right? And you can like eliminate a lot of that. Or somebody's on blood pressure medication and it's still high. I say, are you tracking your blood pressure every single day? Are you writing down when you're taking your medicine? This way, when you can go back to your doctor, you can say, I've been doing X, Y, and Z. This is not working. That way, I feel like I'm helping my patients to advocate for themselves more when they are in those medical settings and trying to break down some of that health literacy issue. So I think that's one way in which we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Absolutely. And yes, please go ahead, Barrister Toki.
No, thank you, Dr. Nee. Please call me Toki. if I'm talking too much, just let me know. Say you have 1 minute, you have 30 seconds, because I really, really love to share information, and any opportunity I get just to speak about, empowering everyone else around us. Because that's something I believe that sometimes, even in the immigrant community, we feel it's like, oh, I have my stuff now, so it's now you guys and not me. So, and I believe that we need to educate that no, one thing can affect everybody else. So one of the things I would say in my practice, immigration law, that I see that we need more education about is social media is great, but sometimes social media is the bane of our existence, because naturally people just, you gravitate towards what you want to hear, right? And you have to understand that most, even I myself, I advertise on social media. So I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but you have to understand that number one, what I'm doing on social media is advertising. So I am going to give you the best information because I want you as a client. And even if you see many attorneys that advertise at the bottom in their, in the comment section, or what is it, the caption will say, "Oh, please know this is advertising. Do not take this as legal advice." So number one is just trying to explain to potential clients that look, it's not because it happened to John is exactly the same thing that is going to happen to you. Number one, the circumstances that existed at the time John did his own case has changed. Number two, your own facts are different from John. Trust me, it can be a period and not a comma or an or in the law, and it's totally different. So, number one, social media, trying to educate people and say, look here, what you just see, don't take it as gospel truth. We have to mold it to you for your situation at this particular time. Okay. Number two, apart from social media and trying to just, oh, but my friend, uncle, sister, auntie did this and that happened to her or him. Number two also is, to be frank, some people, and I understand it's the education, but some people don't, they just want, I paid you this money, get me the result, you know? And I have to explain to people that you have to understand that this is your life. Where did that get you prior to you coming to me? You've gone through three, four other professionals and you're here and you don't even know where your paperwork is. So one of the ways, just like Dr. Pope, I practice is when I have my consultations, I tell them, I say, hey, I'm dividing this consultation into three parts. Number one is housekeeping. Number two is I want to hear in your own words, because people sometimes write, but they're storytellers. So when you're telling your story, I'm getting facts. And the third part would be strategy and see what are our options. So in my housekeeping, I let them, I say, look here, this consultation is for you. Okay. This is the way I like to give information. Does that align with you? Because I educate them. I'll say, here is what is going to happen. It's going to be in three stages, A, B, C. And I know many people don't like to read, but when you're going to deal with the law, where do we mostly get the law? In writing. So I will still write to you and I'll break it down in easy. And I tell people, don't digest it. Anything you don't understand, ask me. I'm here to, but you have to read. So that's one of the things that's education, read, listen. If you don't like to read, now we have a lot of, shall I say, tech that can help us. I tell my clients, I say, play back. I have a recording, I'll record it and they get a copy. I said, if you don't like to read, play it back because this is your life. So one of the challenges I saw, number one is social media, trying to believe. Number two is I know there is that mental block we get when you have a problem, but that's why you have somebody walking with you. You still have to read. And you, as a client, have to say the truth. Don't try and hide things. Oh my goodness. Clients try and hide things. There's some clients, when you say you want to sign up with me, do you know one of the first things I do? I hear you, but I'll do a Freedom of Information Act request. I hear what you're telling me, but I'm going to go to the government because I want to see the paperwork. And then you see something, oh, I forgot. No, you didn't forget. You have to tell your attorneys the truth. So one of the things was education, and I understand that that is trust. Some people, they come from another country where they have distrust of authority, so they're just afraid. So one of my education, I tell them in that housekeeping, this is you're protected under the attorney-client privilege. You can trust me. If I say your case out, I will lose my license to practice. So I try to build trust, educate, and keep it going. So there's more, but I'll keep quiet so we can move on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you both for that. Very, very amazing. And as we're digging deeper into these topics, if anyone would like to also unmute themselves and ask the question via audio, feel free to do that as well. A follow-up question that I had for both of you all is, so I love that you both touched on the way this looks in your profession and how you have taken various steps, strategies, and really thought very deeply about how to implement, these strategies for the betterment of the communities with which you're serving within. So, empowerment requires information. And I think you've both highlighted that. Dr. Pope, you referred to a practice of essentially walking the patient through how to advocate for themselves. And I'll just throw in a little blurb there for the audience, which is that we do have segments of the population where they may not be aware of medical types of processes, and so they're not necessarily keeping track of these things, and that means that their care may not be as well as it should in some instances because there's information missing or they weren't aware of these sorts of things. So that is a very important concern. And then what Attorney Toki was referring to there about being able to know as much as she can about the case. That's also very important because you're going to present something in a court of law, and that means that you need all the facts, right? Facts do matter. And so that's a very important thing. So still on that line of information, so in both of your work, what do you see as the biggest barrier in preventing people from accessing their rights, health related, and how as leaders can we help bridge that gap in our own professions?
Go first. Thanks again. I think the biggest barrier I see again is truly getting the right information out. And Dr. Ini, thank you for organizing this program. This is one of the things that we have to do, whereby the community is involved. The church or the masjid, the religious institutions are involved. All these community-based NGOs, nonprofit organizations, everyone is involved in getting the right information to the right people. And there's something that we're also battling with in the space of immigration law is apart from getting the right information, it's also misinformation. Yes, I spoke about the whole thing about social media, but also there's fear mongering, and there are a lot of we call them notarios in the immigration space, whereby they're not licensed to practice law. Anyway, immigration is federal law, and we have a lot of immigrants because of lack of information, or sometimes the brother or the sister are like, oh, it's just forms, it's just forms, don't worry, I have somebody that can complete it for you. But I tell people and clients that every number, any question that is asked, I guarantee you there is a regulation There's a rule of law behind it, and it can either make or break you. I know people say, "Oh, they're asking me my name." It's just my name. They're verifying your identity. Okay, identity is important. It's not just about your name. Maybe today you're saying, "My name is, Arthur Pope." And tomorrow you say your name is Pope Arthur, and you did not disclose that. Guess what? The United States government will say you're misrepresenting the material fact. You didn't tell us that you used another name. I'm telling you, something as easy as a name. On the forms, they will ask people, what other dates of birth do you have? And all of this, people forget that these systems talk. So you're going number one, you're going with misinformation. Number two, maybe it's because of lack of finance or whatever it is. And some people, they just don't see the benefit or the should I say the when you say the need to pay a professional attorney, they'll rather go to a notario and pay them a very minimal fee. But that fee cannot, when it's time to go to court, let's say a case ends up in court, that's when they know that as a notario, because that person stops picking up their calls, because that person cannot appear in court because you have to have a number, they verify your ID and all that good stuff. So I'll say the greatest, again, just to summarize, the number one is misinformation and not even getting the right information, which are two different issues, right? You getting wrong information is one, then you believing you have the right information, but it's misinformation. So solving it again is like one of the steps you're doing, getting people, letting them to be informed about this is the right way to go, and making them make their own informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Pope. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say I agree. Misinformation is a big thing right now, especially in medicine and science in this country. You know, I had we had our first person to reject Tylenol because they said it causes autism. Like those are the things that are happening and that we're battling in addition to trying to take care of patients, right? Who may potentially also be losing their healthcare. So the ER is kind of where everything comes home to roost in society. And so there is a lot of misinformation, but I think as leaders, we need to start working with the communities and saying, how is it that we can help, right? Not telling them what they to do, right? Like it shouldn't be a top-down approach. It should be a let's talk to the community, figure out what the issues are, and how can we integrate with each other to then provide this information. And I'm fortunate that I work at a place that is really actually genuinely committed to like health inequities. There's a big sign when you drive past a hospital that says, who gets to be healthy, right? And so that is a question that our organization is constantly asking ourselves, and then collaborating with the community to empower them to say, these things are affecting us. Why is it that 3 miles away, downtown Chicago, from the West Side, there's a 20-year health age gap, right? People die 20 years younger. So working with those communities to try to figure out those solutions, I think is the best way that we're going to be able to approach this thing and then also combat misinformation and trying to teach people critical thinking skills again. I think that's a big thing that's happening as well. But
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Pope. And really touching on what both of you had mentioned, this next question segues perfectly because it talks about this intersection of science, facts, and law protection. So, what are your thoughts on how community members, leaders, ministers, whomever, NGOs, individuals that are working on at the local level, either community-driven work, how can they use both science, facts, and the law protection to advocate for their own neighborhoods?
yeah, I think again, so misinformation is a big thing against science and facts, but science has had what helped us to keep us alive, thus far. I think being in medicine and research, you realize how delicate life is, and how science has been involved in that. And so I think what community leaders can start to do to help combat some of this information is say, who is it that we can trust? Is there somebody within our community that we can trust to go to and answer these questions, right? So that may be even in your own church. There's probably a ton of physicians or scientists or lawyers who sit in those church pews every single day, right? And because you're sharing in that faith, you would assume that they are a trustworthy person, right? So that may be somebody easily that you can turn to and say, hey, I'm hearing all these things. Do you think, like, how can you, what information do you know, right? And then maybe they can also then collaborate with these communities and having these professionals come in and start doing some of that work of answering some of these mistrust questions, right? But I think it has to start at the community level. We can't, as professional people, come in and just say this is what we know and this is what, because that's not going to build trust, right? You have to build trust over time, and I think that's why there's still a lot of mistrust in the medical community, because this is of our own fault, right? And we haven't built that trust. But I think that's where you start. You start looking around the people around you, right? Just ask, like, hey, do you know somebody that can be trustworthy that can help me to do this? I think that's where we should start. And that's how they can advocate for their own communities.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Toki.
All right, Dr. Eni, thank you again. And I totally understand it. And again, it still goes back to mistrust. And I agree with Dr. Pope is how can we build trust? And it starts with your family network, what goes out, the community, the religious organization. So these little pockets, if can build in their own, communities, can build relationships with professionals they trust. Is it doctors? Is it attorneys? And they can even try and test them, right? Because trust me, word goes out really fast. If one person, if as a community, they're endorsing, let's say Dr. Eni, Dr. Pope, trust me, as a community, if it truly works, again, we're talking about not, the outliers. We're talking about generally like something that, you're for the people, like how Reverend King was, right? Dr. King was truly is tried and tested. That's how we can make it work. That's what they did during the civil rights movement, right? They went into the communities and they acted as community. They did the marches as communities. They spoke. They had one person, Dr. King, right, a representative, someone acting as covering that community. So therefore, also, in your community, in your respective cultures, you can have, okay, here's our rep, here's someone we can trust. Who can we bring in that we can try and can come give us a little presentation. Okay, they're saying right now that we can, why? And that person hopefully should be able to explain and teach to a point that you yourself, we all have that right critical thinking, that little discernment that you can put one and two together and hopefully, help out the community. Also mentorship, we can start developing this from, like, Dr. Pope, he's been doing that since, where he was, about, getting first generation college students. We can do that here too, establish little pockets. And that's how we can build trust. Because when you have that mentorship, you're already going with professionals, you're already imbuing the information and also teaching the skills to be able to trust and verify information provided. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barrister Toki, for that. In and just a follow-up, I'm going to throw this question to Dr. Pope because I know that he may have to leave us a little bit early. So this is specifically a physician-related question. In the United States, we have about 6% of physicians, approximately, that are Black physicians, African American physicians. So, in terms of longevity, being in the profession, now you've come into the profession from early stage, you've seen the doctoral level work. So, what are your thoughts on how the educational nuances contribute to that percentage we see? And what are your thoughts on the future perspective of that percentage? If you could comment on that for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's many barriers for us entering these pathways, right? I think it starts with in our own communities, the education that we're receiving in our own communities is not particularly great because then that's tied to like funding and all of these things, right? So I think that's one barrier. I think when a kid like ourselves may express that I want to be a scientist, I want to be a physician. Sometimes you have people within that community who don't believe in you and are trying to navigate you away from those things, or even teachers are saying, No, you should think about something else. This is not for you, right? So I think it starts very, very early on. And even when you get to college, right? So if you're on the pre-med track, there may be pre-med advisors who are biased, right? And say, like, oh, you got a B in this one class, which I know plenty of doctors who've gotten B's and C's, right? And they're fabulous physicians, right? You are not going to go down the pathway of medicine, right? And it's all about, it's really that some of this is just a lack of knowledge, right? I am working with the student organization now where this kid, he's a first generation student as well. And he was like, Yeah, I still had to look up things on the internet. And I applied to med school 10 years prior to him. And there's still this huge gap of like, how do I enter this pathway? What do I need to do? What information do I need? So I feel like that it's just a lack of information is still the barrier. And so, again, in my role, I'm trying to like provide that information to young people to say, these are the possibilities of the things you can do. You don't have to be a physician, right? But I want you to know that that's an option for you. That yes, it is challenging to get here, but there are people here to support you. One of the things that is scary to me about the future in terms of this, though, is the federal government is attacking all of these types of programs, right? And so I think that's going to be a barrier to even more students going down this pathway. At my previous job, the university decided that we had to get rid of all things labeled DEI, and I thought they were going to get rid of the program, and then they were able to figure out legally that they could still do it. But it was just a scary moment that I'm like, these students who otherwise would not have this opportunity, who are super talented and can get into any medical school, we won't be able to grab them, right? And so luckily that happened. One of the other big things that worries me now is that recently the administration changed how much professional loans could be taken out, right? So I know there was this whole debate about professionalism versus non-professional degrees. What it really meant was, what is the max amount of money they consider a professional degree or non-professional degree you can take out, right? And so even for a medical school, the max that they're saying now is that you can take out $200,000. My medical school education was way more than that. And now medical school is at least $100,000 a year. So that's tuition and living and costs, right? So where are students going to be able to make up this money? So I think they're trying to shift people towards private loans, which is going to make things more expensive and scary for people to take that risk, whereas the government loan was a little bit more secure. And I think it's going to prevent people like myself from even thinking about medicine because like, can I even afford to go to medical school, right? And so we're just going to be perpetuating sort of this elitism that already exists in medicine. And so that's what has me scared for the future. And so I'm hoping that people will come together, communities, maybe local governments, and say, okay, how can we help sponsor these students to get them through is like maybe one solution. But those are like the big scary things that I worry about right now. It's just people won't have access. They want to do it, but now they're like, it's unaffordable and unattainable for me.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Pope. And I know Dr. Pope will have to head out early, but if you have questions, please feel free to unmute. You can post them in the chat. We're going to still continue our discussions. But I do want to thank you so much for your time and thank you for your service. I know you were serving the community there in Chicago, and we will see you very soon. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much
Thanks,
for
Dr.
this.
Pope.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
So, Attorney Toki, we had talked a lot about how misinformation has essentially filtered through, right? So, if we stay on misinformation, the question I posed earlier to Dr. Pope was on the medical side. So, actual professions that are in the medical field. So, where do you see the educational barriers in the legal field, in careers related to the legal field, shall we say? Because it's not just a one, profession field. So where do we see that going? What do you see as a barrier? And what should communities specifically be thinking about? Because there's been a lot going on the legal side.
Thank you so much. So, number one, what I see as a barrier is um, a lot of young, should I say, professionals. I speak to them and they're like, oh, I think it's just going to be so hard. Just even getting into law school, I have to take the LSAT. it's so hard. And I'm like, it doesn't matter, just do it. I'm like, once you get your license, no one cares about, just get your license, try and find a mentor, and you have to do a couple of network, because some of we professionals, we're running a practice. It's a heavy practice. So if you just reach out to me one time and I don't respond, just don't give up. So one of the barriers I see is people just number one, just assuming because they have to take the LSAT, that is so hard. And I'm like, no, just do your best. Don't give up. Another thing is also, which is true, which I experience as well, is even when you get into law school, you have to still understand that the law is still heavily should I say, Caucasian profession. You barely see a lot of others, even though you think in your community, we're not many. So even going to law school, number one, even the getting a lot of pushbacks from the professors. And I want, little younger, or should I not little, because I mean younger, um, um, people that are considering going to law school to not be deterred by that. Like, I remember a couple of exams that to me were culturally biased. Like, you're writing law school exam questions about baseball. How many people from the continent of Africa know about baseball? So how am I going to be able to, number one, even answer the questions correctly? So I would say that these are little barriers, but we have to speak up. We cannot give up. So we have to keep being resilient, which, sometimes I think is a little bit lacking in this new generation, but we need to step up as mentors, to be frank. So I would say that's number one in just these little steps. Like, don't give up, keep at it, and the sky's the limit. Sometimes even I, in my profession, I want to be intimidated. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have to learn how to file habeas is like, now I have to go to federal court, because mainly in my immigration practice, we'll settle out of court, or I can do that. But you know what, can you read? Yes. Can you write? Yes. You can do it. Find a mentor and you can do it. So it's just a matter of repositioning our mind. And as well, I'll go back to Dr. Reverend King. He's a reverend, right? So I'll go back to my spiritual base too and say, you know what? I don't have a mind of fear. My mind is power. It's sound. I can do it. So that's one of the things I would say I see is just even in our space, just the mindset. And I understand is the conditioning in the society, but we have to get out of that. And whatever we have to say to ourselves to get out of that mindset, like, oh, I can't do this. Find it, do it. Look, go, if you're a spiritual person, read your Bible, read your court, whatever that gets you. If you need a mentor, attach that. But you cannot give up on your goal. So I'll say mindset, a lot of pushback because of where we're in. You will get that in law, because you don't know how many times they look at me like, who is she? And I don't mind. I go in there, I make them laugh, and they don't see that anymore. I'll say something when I go to the DBA, they look at me, I'll say, hi, I'm Toki. I practice immigration law. I help people, I help, companies retain talent in the United States. And before you know it, we start talking. So anyways, you just have to put down your fear and have faith in yourself and go for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney Toki. I'm going to open up the floor if there are any questions for either of the panelists. Please, you can unmute or you can type it in the chat.
This is Professor Adedeji Badiro.
Yes, Prof. Welcome,
I
sir.
very
Please go
much
ahead.
enjoy your discussion here. And I wanted to commend you, Mary, and all the panelists and attendees, that this is exactly what our young people should be doing, because you represent the next generation that will be carrying on the legacy of our forefathers. So I greatly appreciate it, and I thank you. I learned a lot by just listening to all you young people. Now I want to go. I'm retired and I have time, but age is not on my side. I would like to now go to law school, go to medical school, based on all these things that you are saying, because we all have to band together to protect our communities. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prof. I really, really appreciate your words there. Intentionally, I focused it on medicine and law, and I just want to read an excerpt to the audience as we're reflecting on this. Brown versus Board of Education decision was in 1954. It was a landmark decision of the United States Supreme Court, which ruled that U.S. state laws that established racial segregation in public schools violate Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Um, Even if the segregated facilities were equal in quality. This is important because education has always been linked to opportunities. And so, Attorney Toki alluded to the importance of mentorship and in this next generation. And I think that we can all agree that mentorship plays a huge role. In fact, Prof. Badaru has been a mentor of mine now for I don't know how many decades. And so as we look back and we reflect, mentorship has always been an important integral role of how education and empowerment are molded together. Dr. Pope earlier alluded to the work that he's doing in Chicago and how it requires church leaders even to be able to have that space and forum. And in fact, that was actually a strong core of the civil rights movement was in the church meetings, and all of those things were part of how they formed the committees and that movement was mobilized. And so that is an important reflecting point that I just want to mention is that education has always been linked to opportunities. The education is linked to the opportunities. Without the opportunity, there isn't that space, that door opened to have that furthering that we need in the careers. So thank you so much for that, Prof. Um, and thank you, yes, Attorney Toki. Professor Badaru was commending you for specific examples of the possible courtroom dramas. And really, people learn best when they are presented with specifics. Absolutely, sir. That is absolutely. So we're rounding up here in the next few minutes because I do want to be respectful of your time, but I would like to allow Attorney Toki if she has any additional closing remarks. If there are no additional questions for her, any additional questions or comments at this time?
I have one question.
Yes, Dr. Marimi, please go ahead.
Yes, first of all, thank you, Dr. Toby and Barrister Toki for your comments, also to Dr. Pope. As educators, we are, I think one of our things more than just teaching them the tools and the facts and the concepts and definitions is keeping the dream alive in students, the dream that they can finish that course, that degree, and do something with that education. So going back to your time in law school, what do you think your professors could have done differently to help foster that dream in students like yourself among your peers? So basically what I'm asking is, what would you like to see in the faculty or among faculty to be done better so that they can keep that dream alive in their students, whatever that dream might be?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So, one thing I would say is to be present for or be available to your students. I remember a very specific example in law school. My evidence professor, twice I set up office hours and he was not there. And I know why. It was a very discriminatory law school, but I didn't care. I knew I was going to graduate. So, number one, just making sure also that there's a safe space for your students. So, like that culturally biased exam, it was too late when I let one of my professors know, because I actually was also a research assistant to a professor, and he combating Professor Kofelin Diva. And actually, in one of his books, Combating Economic Crimes, he literally just transcribed, he told me he dedicated part of the book to me, because I helped him with the research. But later, when I told him about my experience, he said, "Why didn't you say something earlier? I would have brought it up in the staff meeting." So sometimes, if you're someone of, should I say, another, maybe not Caucasian, and you have to check in with those students. Trust me, there's a bias going on there that maybe the other ones don't even know they are throwing out that bias. So checking in, of course, you cannot be too intrusive, but create an opportunity that they can reach out to you, show up for your office hours. Don't dismiss them, and say, "Oh no, maybe they're building castles in the air." So those are the two main things. Because of time, I have others, because you can tell I can talk for ages, but I'll say those two. Make sure you show up for your office hours, because that's a one-on-one time they can have with you, and maybe learn, create trust, and also just, create space that they can talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
Thank you.
that.
let me add to that.
Yes, please go ahead.
In your interactions with your students, and this is what I tell everyone, it's a lifelong relationship. It's not just a one-way direction that here's my student who has graduated and it's gone. No, all my students for the past several decades are still like my children. No matter where they go, no matter how big they become, that relationship comes back to benefit me also in the long run. And it also helps them as they mentor other professionals. So Toki is very much correct. You have to extend a helping hand to your students or your mentees. Uh, Beyond just office hours, take them on as your own children. And that's the way they can benefit. They learn from you and they go on and practice as well as you have done. So thank you for that comment.
Yes, thank you so much for that as well, Prof. That I absolutely concur as well. And with that, Barrister Toki, I wonder if you have some closing remarks as we're rounding up here.
Thank you so much. I'll try to be respectful of everyone's time, because I think we're already a minute past one, but I believe this closing remark is very important and I'd like to share it. Many of us in the community were like, "Oh, this doesn't affect me," right? When it first started, all this, "Oh no, this is not my problem. I'm a citizen." And then now we're finding out that just being a citizen is not even enough. The administration has set up a whole body to go back and review people's citizenship application, and they can take it away. They've done it in the past and they're working on it. So the idea of it's them versus me doesn't work. We're all one. The only them versus me should be good and bad, good and evil. Everything else, we're one body, we're one neighborhood, we're one family, we're one school. So it should be good versus evil and nothing else. We're all equal in God's eye. Reverend Dr. King believed in that. He believed in humanity, equality, and that's what I hope and my practice stands today. Anyone that I take up as a client, I look at you, number one, as God's child, and I look at you as you deserve the best. Thank you.
Thank you so, so much for that. Absolutely love it. Love what you said. And that is so, so important. And I just want to add that the time is right to do what is right. The time is always right to do what is right. That was a statement that Reverend King always said. I just want to thank everyone for joining our discussions. I'd like to also invite you to please subscribe to the Inspire Collective Hub. We will be continuing this conversation offline, or online rather, at the Hub, but offline off of Zoom. So please do subscribe and stay updated on upcoming events that we have coming up as well. So I just want to thank you all and wish you all happy MLK Day. And thanks for joining us. Have a blessed day. Thank you,
Thank you.
Barrister
Love you,
Toki.
Ini. Love you,
Thank you so
Barrister
much.
Tokes. Bye.
Bye-bye.